Eddie O'Hare considered himself to be the unluckiest man in the cosmos, and bluntly, he had a damn fine point. Florida was the largest producer of tangerines in the world. Far out, in the uncharted backwaters of the unfashionable end of the western spiral arm of the galaxy, lies a small, unregarded yellow sun. Those are the first lines from 3 of my favorite books of all time. To any writer, is there anything scarier than that first blank line on the page? Or do you find it easy kicking off your opus, crafting lines of literature that scorch their way into the reader's minds? Whichever side you fall on, one thing for certain is true. If you don't have a killer start to your novel, it might as well be dead in the water. So that is the question that we pose this week on the Writer's Block. What is a great way to start your novel? Heidi howdy, everybody. My name is Marcus, and I'm the idiot on the Writer's Block. So, to get great tips on how to start your novel, we've asked these experts what they think.
I'm a big believer in starting novels near the inciting incident. Now, keep in mind that I enjoy a fast-paced commercial fiction. I am a biased person giving this advice. So I don't like books that meander before things get going. Therefore, to write a page-turner, something that starts really quickly, again, I recommend starting a novel right before everything changes for your protagonist. So usually that means you see your protagonist in their elements. You see whatever life is normally like for them, maybe chapter 1, and then during that time, you see your protagonist having something that they want that they cannot achieve. So there's your kind of initial conflict. And then there's maybe an inciting incident, maybe that first big conflict, but something that calls your protagonist to action where they have the choice to go forward with the plot or not, and usually they can no longer keep on with life as it was. And then obviously they're going to make that choice to move forward with the plot, otherwise there's no book.
I always, because I teach a bit of creative writing as well, so I always talk to my students about having a sense of movement or forward motion when you start a novel. And that can work in very many different ways. You'll find a lot of times when you look at novels and films and stuff, they'll begin with running, and that's very much about that sense of forward motion. Or you'll begin with someone driving a car, or you'll begin with someone walking somewhere. And that's because the narrative drive, it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's supposed to move you forwards or propel you forwards. Sometimes in a book, I always cite By Nightfall by Michael Cunningham, who wrote The Hours, the novel, not the film. And in that book, you've got 2 characters who are just stuck in traffic. And I think that, for me, that was an amazing start because it's a version of that being a forward motion. But what was happening was the conversation they were having in the car was that gave that sense of forward movement. So he bucked the rules in a sense, but he also adhered to the rules because their conversation, I won't say what it was about, basically is the inciting incident, basically sets the story in motion, And so even though they're stuck in traffic, something is happening, something is moving. It's more the emotional journey that's happening with the characters. So I always say you should have either an emotional forward drive or actually a physical forward drive. And once you've got those things, that will compel the reader to want to read on.
Don't open a book with your character waking up. It's a very, very basic rule. And I've seen it broken well. I've seen it broken in very, very good ways, but I've also seen it fall flat 100,000 times more often than I've seen it work. And so, we talk about probably some of the biggest feedback I give is the story starts too fast or the story starts too slow. And so when you are opening your book, you're looking for that sweet spot right in the middle. And, everyone, it's like been beaten to everyone's head. You start with the action, you start with the action, you start with the action. And I'm like, no, you don't just start, with, let's say, a bank robbery, because you start with a bank robbery and you're just like, okay, so is this like a normal Tuesday thing? Or is this just like something this person like is happening upon, or is this normal? Like, you have no idea unless you have that little bit of normal beforehand. So like if he walks into a bank and he's thinking about, you know, the main character is thinking about, you know, the car he wants to buy, or, you know, the lawn mowing jobs that he had to do to get this point, and then all of a sudden gets tangled up in a bank heist, well then, yeah, there's some really cool stuff going on there. And so you want to get that immediate, you know, engrossment in the story, but you also want to create stakes as well. And so there's so much that needs to be packed into those first 5 pages that you can really tell how strong a writer is just on those first 5 pages, especially with shorter work. Because, you know, 5 pages of a picture book, that's pretty much the whole thing.
A story should begin at its latest possible moment. You want to get the story going right away so that your reader is asking questions right from the beginning. Because if your reader is asking questions, then they are always going to be engaged in the story. So a good story starts at its latest possible moment. Me personally, that's what I think.
Well, first of all, I think that's a great question. Where do you start your novel? I would say the first thing is you've got to start your novel in the heart of the action, but you probably won't do that on your first draft. You will probably write the story from beginning to end as it comes to you in your head. But then when you're playing it back and you're really conscious of either an agent or a publisher or somebody new reading your book, you need to basically be able to connect with that book, don't you, in the first couple of pages. So it's really important to have a strong narrative voice, but also to start in the heart of the story so that you've got to read on. So Cowgirl, for example, I had about 5 different starts before I plumped for the one that we've gone for. And I rewrote the beginning of the story to basically signpost what's going to happen to Billy further along in the novel. And so I've now got the opening scene where she's lying underneath a cow, milking the cow, even though at that point she's a city girl. But I'm basically structurally setting it up to that's where we're going. I think writers should probably avoid a really long setup and too much explanation. So if you think about some of the greatest novels out there, probably start in the middle of a conversation. So you can start in the middle of a conversation, you can start in the middle of a scene, and don't forget you can always flash back if you need to catch up. But I think what you probably shouldn't do is labour the point of where you are and explain everything and everybody. So it's all about show, don't tell.
There you have it. Great tips from the experts. Check the description for this video to get links to their profile and their work. What did you think of their suggestions? Do you have any recommendations you'd like to share? Or maybe some of your favorite first lines from novels that you'd like to shout out? Put them all in the comments to this video. We'd love to read them. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to get great tips on how to write and publish your first novel. I'm Marcus Acco. See you next time.